All right. So now we crossed the Rubicon, but you might imagine just as Julius Caesar had some problems after crossing the Rubicons, most of us, Rubicon, most of us have some problems once we decided. It's not that just by forming an intention, even though we might be a little bit more upbeat, we might be more optimistic, we might feel energized. That doesn't mean that all the problems on the other side just disappear. So let's have a look at that. So this is basically the situation where when right now Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he formed the intention, and now he needs to put the behavior on. He needs to get moving towards Rome, fight 1 or 2 or 3 or 12 armies. In the meantime, feed his own army and so forth. Rather difficult goal process to become Roman Empire. So the idea here is in this chapter that there's a gap, an intention behavior gap in all the theories that talk about motivational problems, attitudes, expectations, and also norms. They kind of ignore that once you have the intention that there's still much to do. So what would they say? They kind of forget they forget that there are these problems exist along the way that we have to overcome, right? One indicator would be from a scientifically speaking, or from a scientific point of view, is if this kind of intention, I really, really want to perform this behavior, and performing this behavior is less than perfect, right? So these models basically a theory of planned behavior, theory of reasoned action, half belief model, and so forth, all kind of expectancy value theories believe that there's almost like a perfect correlation between intention and behavior, right? Sometimes they acknowledge that past behavior is a problem that kind of has that, but they kind of stop thinking about it. They kind of forget the obstacles along the way. So here's a classic study. This is by Pascal Sheeran. He has done tons of study. He has also done a meta-analysis on this topic that I will cite in a minute. And this is what's called the intention behavior gap. This is basically looking at people who say have the intention to perform the behavior. How often do they perform the behavior? Here you can see this is six studies. There are a little bit related to sex. So here's condom use, cancer screening, exercise, classic health psychology problems, right? And here you can see basically the likelihood of acting, so behavior no, right? And so what you can say, here you can see that if I don't have an intention, then I also don't act. And if I have no intention, there's basically nobody acts. So it's like, oh, I really don't want to exercise, but swoop-de-whoop, I just started running, right? Or I really don't want to do a cancer screening, and swoop-de-whoop, I started running. I spare us the third example. Okay, so we have that. This is the reason why we think intentions are so important, right? Because without an intention, basically, people do not act. But then if you look on the right side, you can see that people who have an intention, about 40% of them act, and more people than not. About 40 to 50% do not act, right? And just slightly more. This is in a time before they had how's this called, like error bars to indicate whether there's actually a significant interest. Just slightly more. It's basically if a person has a chance in these 6 studies, has an intention to perform a behavior, it's a 50-50 chance whether they do it or not. This is what's called the intention behavior gap. I really want to do it and I don't. This is very prominent, and you're probably by now familiar with that in health psychology, that people go out and say, yes, I'm convinced I should exercise more. Oh, I really feel like I can do it. I really want to exercise more, and then they don't exercise, right? And this is because they have self-control problems. They have problems along the way, fighting from the intention, from the right side of the Rubicon all the way to Rome. So here you can basically see that this is the idea. This is the meta-analysis by Pascal Sheeran. I think it's Weapon Sheeran. Sorry, I forgot to put the reference in here. And they find that about 20 to 30% of the of behavior can be explained by the intention. So don't get me wrong. This is a large effect. This is really strong, especially for psychology. Intentions are really important. But you can also see that at least 70% of the relation is not explained. And it becomes even even worse, this relation, if you factor in past behavior, right? So if you kind of like a lot of people basically who have the intention also might have performed this behavior in the past, and that is why they perform it again. So there is a correlation, and this correlation is strong, and we should sorry, there's some alarms going off here in my room. Probably I should stop speaking or something. But we have to take more into consideration. And this is what we will do in the upcoming chapter. So there's a lot of kind of sayings that kind of found the foundation for what we're doing on, right? It's a long step from saying to doing, from an intention to doing here. Actions speak louder than words. Talk is cheap. Practice what you preach. It's easier said than done. Put your money where your mouth is. Or my favorite, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So I think if we would have listened to a lot of these sayings in many cultures, we would already know that there is a long way from intention to behavior. Why is this the case? One problem we talked a little bit already about is that people change their mind, right? This is like one of the enemies along the way. We might feel like, I don't know, the first obstacle, if they don't really commit, right? These people who are indulging in positive fantasies about their success, they never really commit. Hence, whenever there's a problem or obstacle along the ways, they kind of go back into the deliberation, or they might kind of be kicked into the deliberation phase because maybe a good meaning interventionist came and said, like, let's just write down all the reasons why you actually want to achieve that mark. And then you go back to the deliberate phase. Hence, you are more likely to change your mind. The next chapter we were looking at is getting started, right? Often a problem. How can I get started? How should I think about my problem in order to make it more likely that I actually start acting on it, right? Procrastination and so forth. So we will look at strategies to help us overcome that. Staying on track. How can I basically, let's say I start exercising, but then I stop the second or third time. How can I stay on track? How can I make sure that I not get lost and do something else, or kind of forget about the behavior and do something else instead? But maybe I stay. So this would be thereafter. First we talk about getting started, then we talk about staying on track, then we talk about overextension. That means if I just pursue too many goals, how can I prevent myself from doing that? How can I figure out if that's the problem? And then also sometimes a weirdly under-researched topic is that people can't stop. And we will also, let's say there's something fundamentally changed in the relationship between the behavior and what you want to achieve. You should stop. But that, once you get going, might be harder to do than you think. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 chapters ahead of that each tackle one of these problems along the way. And we talked a little bit about already changing your mind and how to prevent that.